Hi, Mark. Welcome to the Meet the Founders interview series. My name is Yatu Yoga. I'm an anthropologist working in the crypto space. So it's really nice to have you here. So you're from Fuse. So
Yeah,
before we talk about Fuse, I thought it'd be nice to maybe talk about how you've arrived at this crypto space. You've been around here for a while.
yeah. So thank you for having me, and definitely been doing this for a long 8 years, more than 8 years since I started, and I wouldn't be able to anticipate this 8 years ago. But I kind of was fascinated by the technology, and it just kept growing and growing, and became into like a whole industry. And it's fascinating to see it happen around me. So when I started in 2013, it was really when I saw how hard it is to buy Bitcoin. I bought like one Bitcoin. It was like $20 back then, just because I knew that I can hear about the technology, but if until I'm not buying some Bitcoin, I will probably forget about it. Like it's the best way to keep my attention and be knowledgeable about what's happening. And back then, it's really fascinated me from the payments angle. Because my background is in e-commerce. My first company I started when I was 14, and it's an e-commerce provider here in Israel, working with large retailers, basically building online shops, which is very relevant nowadays. But the early days of the internet, people were treating it the same way they treated Bitcoin. Like, is this going to work? Is this a new thing? Like, the new thing is going to stay? Like, there's a lot of speculation even around in the internet at the early days. So really, the first company in crypto was all about Bitcoin, because that's like, there was no blockchain industry yet. Then we said, okay, it doesn't make sense to buy stuff with Bitcoin, because there's a lot of reasons. I can go into it, but we actually put Bitcoin as a payment method into shops, into e-commerce or online shop. You can actually use your Bitcoin to buy online and buy beer, and it was really, really cool. And back in 2013, it was fascinating how Bitcoin can bypass all those payments mechanisms that are very, very expensive and limited and fragmented, and basically don't work unless you're based in America if you want to sell to Americans. Then fast forward a few years, all of the companies really tried that. All of the companies that they started really tried to implement payments in a way that uses a blockchain, but not using Bitcoin itself, representing real world value, like dollar, pounds, euros, being able to come to a shop and pay, and do it in a very different model. And this is what my company doing today, Fuse.io. And really implementing everything we learned with all the experiments before Ethereum, and today on top of Ethereum. We feel that there's a lot still to go, but the technology kind of evolved to reach a point where today there's ecosystems around stable coins, ecosystems around payments, around new, like, innovative financial instruments that people are building, and this is why we like this space. Just like a lot of experimentation going around, and now we feel like we're coming to a point where it's mature enough, so we can actually start building stuff that mainstream audiences can use, and not necessarily for speculative reasons.
Interesting. Thanks for that background, Mark. Okay, so then I guess in that narrative arc now we're at Fuse. So it would be good to hear. So I'm someone from a very non-technical background. So it would be great to hear, how you would describe Fuse to one of these, as you said, mainstream people that aren't techie, that aren't speculative. So pretend I'm one of these people. So what is Fuse about?
Yeah, so I'll go a little bit back, especially since you're an anthropologist. I think there's a big trend, bigger than crypto, and definitely bigger than crypto and open source movement. The bigger trend is the fact that we're moving into a cashless society. Cash is changing, like physical cash. Our definition of how money works or needs to work is changing. How money is supporting our economy, and the models are constantly evolving. Sort of like this long-term trial and error, like very long term. And the cash-based money that we use today, which is paper-based, is only something like half a millennium old. So I think something like 500 years or 600 years. Technology is rapidly changing the properties that were originally cash was based on, or fiat money, money that is created by governments. And I think that one of the things that this rapid change is creating is really a push towards new business model. And really try to understand how to bring this technology in the hands of people. We think that Fuse is in a world where you have a lot of value flows in blockchains, and people are using more than one blockchain to pay. You need a service that will bundle those payment infrastructure, payment services, and really make it usable by anyone. So anyone can come, launch a payment service, launch a wallet. So suddenly you can see smaller retailers that are competing with larger retailers. You can see non-bank entities that are suddenly competing with banking services, places where people don't have bank accounts, maybe because it's expensive, maybe because there is a high barrier. Suddenly that you see that there are service providers that try to lower that barrier. I can go on and on and on about how the economy works today and how it should work, because people are kind of stuck in this mentality that Visa is the best thing that happened to us and nothing can improve their model. But in the end of the day, this model is not really useful for most of the planet. If you go to South America, Africa, Asia, they didn't hear about Visa, but they're probably not going to hear about it in the future. They'll hear about WeChat, they'll hear about, in Kenya, you have Safaricom. So they know about digital payments, probably some of the places even more than the West. So Fuse is really trying to build on that. It's a tool that allows any entrepreneur, any company, an individual, doesn't matter if you're technical or not, you don't need to be a developer, you can launch your own payment service. If you're a group of like a local marketplace, if you want a loyalty program, if you want to create a banking service that gives incentives, or even if a municipality wants to give incentives, economic incentives work, and users want to use mobile to pay. So Fuse is really a software stack that allows to do it in a cheaper way than Visa. So basically, in one sentence, instead of paying Stripe, Square, PayPal 2.9%, you can build an equivalent on top of Fuse, and it only will cost you 1 cent per transaction. So it's really a decentralized version of Stripe.
Yeah, that sounds very lucrative. 1 cent a transaction, rather than what I'm paying now. Okay, that's interesting. And on your website, you kind of use the term you want to economize a community that already exists, right? And
yeah,
so, and I guess it's any size, right? That you're talking about kind of quite large scale communities as well, and quite small scale communities.
Yeah.
Well, like I guess me and my friends, if we wanted to create our currencies.
Yeah. So this is why we use the term economy, because when you use Visa to go to Starbucks or McDonald's and you want to pay 15 pounds, that's basically the basic service that Visa provides. You're basically not charged anything, but in the back end, there is a fee that is paid by McDonald's. The absurd thing usually is that companies like McDonald's are paying smaller fees than smaller players. So as bigger you are, Visa will charge you less because you pose a less of a risk. But it doesn't really incentivize people to move money around within the economy. So 15 pounds are paid, 1% is charged. The money basically moves from A to B, and that's it. The economic activity stops there. With Fuse, we want to incentivize people to circulate money around because there's no like a big percentage that we charge. There's no risk management on the back end. There's no underwriting cost or fraud or chargebacks and stuff like that. You need to remember Visa is a technology from the 60s and it works in pool. So their model is flawed at the essence. And I'm not talking about the fact that it's not, it doesn't live inside your phone yet, not everywhere. We wanted to create a system where people are moving money around and a dollar can go back and forth and generate much more economic activity. Really, the idea is to facilitate, an infrastructure for those types of economies and let other companies earn. So instead of Visa taking a big cut in the middle, we're removing that percentage and basically give any company a chance to earn. So for instance, in Liverpool, we have a company called People that is doing a cool product that tries to eliminate delivery services out of the equation that charge like 20 or 30%. If you look at a lot of startups, like a very basic requirement is accepting payments. So it's pretty universal. Any one of those startups needs to charge their own fee on top of Stripe or Square or Plaid or any other player, because most of the business models in the payment space are fee-based. But if there's no fee, if it behaves like cash, then interesting stuff can happen. You can suddenly see the money circulating. You can see more use cases that can build around it. We really want to offer an alternative to cash.
That's super
and Visa payments.
Yeah. So do you? I guess the reason why those kind of high costs exist for like Visa and credit cards, right, especially in the American system, is because of this reversibility, right, of transactions and kind of.
Yeah.
So do you imagine kind of your system being used for a particular kind of use case where maybe not in industries where there are kind of a lot of kind of claimbacks and people saying like, oh, actually, this is an erroneous transaction, especially I think like the adult industry has the highest kind of rate. People like, oh no, I didn't actually buy that, like, and kind of people claiming that back, and that's part of that gets put onto kind of that transaction cost for Visa.
Yeah.
So how does that fit in with kind of your thinking?
So I think when people pay at the store with and they want to get consumer protection, there's a lot of stuff that in the model that Visa uses or PayPal, anybody can call and automatically cancel the transaction, which is not the preferable thing, because it shouldn't be easy to cancel a transaction, in my opinion. If you can generate more data, if you can mitigate the risk, if you can offer consumer protection as an additional service and not by default charge everybody 3%, you can create those systems that behave a little bit closer to cash. There's a lot of trade-offs in the way that the system works now. So maybe it's really good for internet users because internet payments are a new thing. It's really good for internet users, certainly on PayPal, to cancel a transaction immediately. But if you look 20 years into the future, There's not going to be internet users and non-internet users. All payments are going to be online payments. Like there wouldn't be this distinction between e-commerce and commerce. Everything would be commerce. Users are educated right now about a new thing that you can pay with your phone. But in 20 years from now, it wouldn't be a new thing. And then you ask yourself, do I need to pay 3% for the right to cancel a transaction? What if I'm buying fruits physically? I'm at the store and I'm buying fruits. Like the store owner needs to pay on the tiny margins an additional 3%. That just, not sustainable business model. Definitely not something that those companies can compete on. And it's a bit like the competition between Apple that takes 30% and Google that takes 30% on their app store. It's a strange sum. Nobody knows where it came from, and there's no real competition between them. Nobody really tries to reduce it. I feel like if we want to bypass all those old business models and look a bit into the future, we need to understand that digital cash needs to behave like physical cash. Sometimes you want to have consumer protection, sometimes not. It should be an additional service. So what Fuse is trying to create is Fuse is not a company that will replace Visa. We don't think any one company can just come and say we want to replace Visa. We want to create an ecosystem of companies providing different services. And one of those services needs to be consumer protection. Additional service should be chargeback protection and lending and insurance. And so basically, those are stuff you can build on top of a decentralized infrastructure. But if one centralized company comes and says, I just want to charge 3% for consumer protection, I don't think it's a good model.
Yeah, definitely. Like where that charge is going to help other people, right? In the normal kind of Visa model, like, that charge goes to help other systems as well. I know in America, they have like kind of different kind of incentives. They have a different kind of credit card structure to kind of like we have here. They have these kind of fancy JP Morgan kind of credit cards where you can, you pay like $500 to get one of these things, or $1,000 even to get these kind of incentives. And those kind of chargebacks are kind of then used to give all these incentives, which is, maybe to buy a banana or pineapple or like, certain things that you're not going to charge back. Maybe you don't need to do that there.
And also you see lately more and more services like Venmo and Square Cash, and people are expecting to get this service for free. On Venmo, there's no business model. They make money on your data. So that's the other part of the payments industry. There's three ways to make money in the payments industry. It's fees, data, and just selling licensing for the software that runs it on the back end. So there's on all three of those business models, we're trying to tackle. Our code is fully free, open source. Any private information is stored locally on the consumer phone. Public information is stored on the blockchain. And we don't have one entity that capture all the value to make fees from the transactions. There will be a lot of SaaS products on top of it that can charge a fee, and the network itself charges a fee. But there's no like one middleman that builds a moat and doesn't let anybody else bypass it. And I think this is really something that takes decades to build. But right now, it's really we feel like there's an acceleration of the move to cashless. There's acceleration of the disappearance of physical cash, just because we're in like a very interesting point in history where regulators want to eliminate cash because it creates a lot of problems for them. So they want to create more and more digital payment services and digital products. And on the other hand, consumers really push for mobile payments as well. We see this as a very strong consumer demand. Usually, if people see consumer demand for something, it's happening really fast. And this is something we see everywhere in the world. So it's not like limited to the West or the East or to developing countries or the Western countries, everywhere in the world right now, especially with the Corona, we just accelerated the digital transformation. We see the move to cashless everywhere. So that's really why I think with Visa it took a few decades. At the beginning it didn't really work. They tweaked it a little bit, became sort of like a consumer club that is sponsored by the merchants. Now we really see how we can improve the model because the technology just allows for better products, basically.
Yeah, definitely. That's really interesting. So just in terms of um, going cashless, so what do you think you have to emulate? What are the properties of cash that you're trying to kind of emulate? I know that means different things for different people. So, but what does that mean for you to emulate cash digitally?
Yeah, so I think Satoshi, the original vision was to create a decentralized cash system or alternative to cash. But definitely it didn't fulfill this vision, or at least not yet, because Bitcoin is more like digital gold than digital cash. It makes sense to use it as much as it makes sense to use gold to pay. People are using it for investment. We really think that if we want to create digital cash, it needs to work in a push model, just like you can send an email. Right now, mobile payments are mostly like pull-based. So basically, you give a permission to a third party to charge you, and this is really comfortable to people. The security properties of blockchain-based assets are totally different. So there's less, the underlying infrastructure that blockchains provide let us create a better cash alternative and lets us give cash Bitcoin properties, which is that it's transferable, it's not double spendable. You can really create a fungible digital asset, something that wasn't really imaginable 10 years ago. And I think that's like really the first step. Now people realize, okay, we can do this and we can do that. But mainly it's trying to take the infrastructure and trying to use it to build a better business model. I think that's the real innovation, not necessarily putting cash on top of a blockchain and that's it. It's really about using a blockchain as a means to reach a better business models for digital cash. Naturally, it's not something that you can just print. It's easier to just print, paper notes. Central banks need to understand how to regulate it. They need to understand the risks. It's not all like simple. Just move from paper to mobile. It takes some time, but that's really the where I think we're currently at, where central banks are kind of realizing, hey, this could actually be a huge benefit for central banks. Solves a lot of problems for governments, creates new possibilities like UBI, macroeconomic data in real time, being able to incentivize, detect the velocity of the currency in real time, where it's used more, where it's used less, where we need to incentivize people a bit more. Until now, nobody really saw those numbers. Decisions were made really without any data, definitely not in real time. So I think just a better model for our economy moving forward.
Okay, so going into this cashless world, so I guess for many it has to replicate privacy as well, right? In going into this kind of world, or do you think that is also something to be? Is that something to be kind of? There has to be this kind of compromise maybe going into this cashless world, or
I think in the end of the day, a big part of fungibility is also the fact that not everybody knows what you're paying for, and not everyone is tracking your every movement. And naturally, if people are tracked, they behave differently. It's like, you know, privacy is changing the behavior of money in places like China, where you can really like it boosted a lot of people out of poverty. It created you know, new ways to trade, and really revolutionized, like overnight. China became a cashless society. I think they will going to, like, it happens so fast that they will take decades to figure out the negative sides. And of course, this is something that we keep in mind a lot if we want to create a business model for smaller players. If we want to empower people to launch those services, we can't just give custodianship over private information to random people. The model that powers the internet right now is this model where people are giving up their privacy and getting a service for free, and it's like a beneficial to both sides. In the long term, I think we'll like, powered by new options that technology allows. People can be self-sovereign. People can be empowered to build those services and not think about GDPR, and not think about obtaining a money transmitter license, just because of the simple fact that they don't hold any information. If they can prove that they're not controlling the system, they can't do anything on behalf of users. They can't touch users' funds. They're not hoarding private information. If they can show that they're relieving control, they can also be required to a lower type of licensing. And I think this is really the major key here. If we want to see those economies grow bottom up, we can't just count on a municipality, on a regulator to build, or the central bank to build like really good consumer products. I don't believe in government's abilities to create consumer products. You really want to think about lowering barriers, so more players can enter the system, because it's currently controlled by a handful of companies. You have banks, you have pretty much any company, you have like major tech companies, big banks, and basically that's it. The big retailers, they can afford create, you know, digital experiences, but small retailers could never compete with larger retailers on digital experience. And what you want is more than a handful of retailers offer financial services in a country. You really want this. If you want financial inclusion, it's more than just, you know, give McDonald's a wallet, and like a big gas station will create a wallet, and basically everyone else will use it, and they'll like the rest will die. That's not the goal. The goal is that everybody can compete on the consumer pocket, and this is how I feel the transformation to a cashless society will happen faster.
Interesting. And so you've got moving on, but still maybe connected to that, is also now I saw on Twitter you're kind of also releasing your kind of beta product, Decentralized exchange, that kind of also is an important part of kind of maintaining that kind of privacy, perhaps, as well.
Yeah. So I think what we realized is that communities is a very general name. In the end of the day, it's a group of people with you know, similar goals, that want to use a service, that are affiliated somehow, want to be in the same club together, you can say. And there's another company that manages that and provides services for them. In the context of a decentralized network, in the context of a blockchain, a community is just, a list of people in a contract. And this group can actually enjoy very powerful tools that just come out of the box. So sending money around, that's a very basic function that blockchains provide. Now we're realizing in the last few years that it gives you more functionality. It's more than just moving Bitcoin back and forth. You can also very cheaply exchange one asset to another. And the cool thing with the decentralized exchanges is that at the beginning it seemed like a niche, but now it really exploded in volume. So there was like almost $70 billion traded in the last year. Another thing people realized, traded through decentralized exchanges. Another thing that people realized is that crypto fiat is more than a niche, that as well exploded in volume. Actually, since the middle of 2019, most of the value that's been transferred in the crypto space is actually in stable coins. And there's a very nice ecosystem of dollar-pegged stable coins, but also we see a lot of countries and a lot of ecosystems starting to generate in different parts of the world. You have Euro stable coins, Indonesian rupee, you have South American stable coins. So every place and their own problems. Stable coins are sometimes a solution. Definitely, if you want to make stuff a bit more clear to consumers, if you want to reduce the learning curve for people onboarding to crypto, you really need to give them dollars. You need to give them something they know. So Fuse really taking all of those things and trying to focus on one specific use case. A person that goes and shops, buys coffee, or sending allowance to their kids, everyday transactions, not necessarily stuff you would do on Ethereum. And what we realized is that the needs are pretty universal, but because we're doing the vertical integration, we can offer easy P2P payments, we can offer easy asset exchange, we can build the software stack because we own the entire stack that is optimized specifically for people that are using crypto without knowing that it's crypto behind the scenes. So this is what the use case that we're optimizing for, being a Visa alternative. And like any other, like any other, let's say a tourist wants to travel to Europe and he has dollars and he needs euros, exchanging foreign exchange is essential. So like any other thing you can do with your cash, which is exchanging it to another currency, we need Fuse to be able to do it as well. And there we can offer real benefits, because when you're buying from a decentralized exchange, you're not necessarily buying from any specific person. You're actually buying from a contract, and there's no real exchange behind the scenes. It's a radically different model. Fuse is not making any money on this trade. Fuse is not providing liquidity for this trade. And even more, with the technology as it evolved until this day, you can actually build an exchange, but not be operating it. Actually give the community a way to operate it and provide liquidity and earn fees. So this is really one of the best examples of the benefit of just using Ethereum, of running on top of a standard, you can call it, sort of like HTTP, but for money, you can say. And out of working on top of Ethereum, you can get a lot of things out of the box, like swapping coins, transferring them around. So it definitely went beyond the original intention for Bitcoin, what Ethereum allows.
Yeah, I guess there's just more developers and people kind of working on it for you, I guess. And there's more things that you can interestingly do on it. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so, I mean, that sounded really, great. What you were saying about how we can kind of get to that kind of stage. But what are the kind of the main challenges that you're kind of facing now in kind of actualizing that kind of goals? Like, what are your main kind of challenge that you're working on now, and maybe like challenges that are kind of more near in the future?
Yeah, I think it's really about trying to build a model that doesn't focus on numbers. Because if I just want to bring 1 million people, if I want to create a community of 1 million people, and if I want to validate the model, I can easily do it. I need $1 million, and I can bring 1 million people. There's a lot of methods that are really effective if we want a lot of people use it for, basically for 2 minutes, and that's it. But if you want to create a long-term business model that is sustainable, if you want to create a model that works, that is replicable, so we know that if it works in one place, it can easily be replicated across the world. And instead of focusing on one huge community, you focus on like the long tail. We want to be in a place where in 2 years from now, we have 1,000 communities all doing 1,000 transactions a day. So we calculated that 1 million transactions a day is really achievable if we have small communities of around 1,000 people each. And it's not necessarily the focus of big tech companies, and definitely not financial providers or banks. But if you can empower those communities to launch on Fuse, and you can actually incentivize them because they can earn money, then you can reach really, really high numbers. 1 million transactions a day, that's a very, I think, realistic effort. And the thing that is important to note here is the fact that those communities are providing the service for the one community that can work in one part of Spain can be easily replicated across other cities. And there's a lot of different pains they can solve, and every operator is like a small franchise. They can earn money. So that's really the challenge here. People, when they see Fuse, they see like a Stripe alternative, or they don't really see any equivalent inside the crypto space for what we offer. Most crypto services or most crypto companies focusing on people that have crypto. We're actually trying to validate the model that says crypto is a transparent layer. Nobody knows about it. We're not shoving Bitcoin down people's throats. It's not speculators. We're talking about everyday people doing everyday stuff like buying milk, or sending allowance to their kids, or doing remittances, or exchanging dollars to euros because they need euros. And that's really a different direction for crypto. It's a bit like Linux. If you would ask somebody 15 years ago about Linux, they'll probably say it's not like it's worse than using Windows. Today, everybody using Linux, they don't even know it. It's behind the scenes in their phone. It's behind the scenes in their cloud. Pretty much any website is powered by Linux on the back end, because Linux democratized a big part of the infrastructure. And now there's a technology that can democratize access to money, democratize access to digital money. Which is definitely something that the regulators are kind of embracing. Like, definitely from the look of it recently, seems like regulators see a threat in physical cash. They see a problem, and they acknowledge the consumer demand, and you see that they give a lot of boost, maybe not specifically to Bitcoin, but anything that can help them to collect more taxes. And digital money is probably good for taxes, just like it's good for consumers.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And are there any communities kind of, on the kind of Fuse network now, and kind of
Yeah.
onboarding, and how are they finding it? What's happening with them?
Yeah, so our playbook was build the sandbox, launch it as fast as we can, let people play with it that are not necessarily technical. So you can go to fuse.io and create a community using the studio. The studio is like a backend tool. You can select DAI, USDC, USDT, digital rand, like fiat stable coins, or you could, like existing, you don't have to create your own. But if you want to create your own loyalty system, or create, like, I don't know, Mark Bucks and start giving people rewards in dollars, you can really craft your own model and experiment and launch without any technical knowledge and with fraction of the cost. And usually reaching customers with payment apps is very expensive. I know this from personal experience in my previous companies, building something centralized that has to do with money, or creating a good digital experience that involves money. It's a very expensive thing. KYC cost, you have development cost, iOS, Android, you have, of course, building it and integrating to banking, and then it's very limited. It's not necessarily, if you're using Stripe, you can't really support bank accounts. If you want to support bank accounts, you're not supporting Visa. If you want to support Stripe, it wouldn't work anywhere else other than North America and parts of Europe. So there's a lot of fragmentation, a lot of limits, a lot of costs and regulatory obstacles. We want to bypass them and give this tool for people, especially in places where there's no banking infrastructure. People are using this without any technical knowledge in places like Trinidad, South Africa. We have a project next month in Thailand. They're doing actually a music festival there, and you can come to the festival and deposit cash and get it into the wallet. And instead of paying with cash, which is a lot of friction, you can actually go scan a QR code and buy beer in the concert. I really hope they would not cancel it because of Corona. So it's really fascinating to see what people need and how they apply this technology. And people are realizing that, or we realized this very early on, but it's definitely something that we see a lot of support from the data, that everybody needs a good payment experience. It's like the lowest common denominator. It doesn't matter if it's in Thai or Spanish or English, it doesn't matter. People want to pay with their phones, and providing a way to do it with a good user experience is very valuable. So that's really the playbook.
Yeah, that's yeah, I like your idea about, they don't really have to know about crypto to kind of even make the kind of payments. They just have to kind of plan codes and do things, and then kind of it's just built into the back infrastructure like Linux without, and I think that's having the logic of crypto in the background is seems like a very
but if you go back to 2017, if somebody wanted to say, like, there's a lot of companies that say, we don't want we want this to be easy to use and blah blah blah. But in the end of the day, in 2017, if you wanted to create something easy to use, you probably wouldn't use a blockchain. Today the technology matured enough, so we try to do a lot of the heavy lifting, like social recovery if people lose their access to their accounts, like fee abstraction. If we don't want users to hold Ethereum to pay gas, we lower the verification time or transaction finality, because you don't want people to stand waiting for confirmations when they're buying, fruits. There's a lot of small parts that make it difficult to use blockchains. That people, if they want to build something with blockchains today, probably would be very difficult to develop by themselves. We try to kind of generalize and bundle it in one software stack, like take it for free. Just pay us 1 cent per transaction.
Yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. And sorry, we could talk about that for a while. Just realize I'm running out of time. So just had a couple of more questions. So what have been kind of the important cultural shifts do you think along the crypto journey to kind of you being here to being, to being able to do these kind of more complex moves on kind of the Ethereum, and what kind of, important, you've been in around the space for quite a really long time. So what important shifts do you think have been there along the crypto journey to where we are now?
So I think actually the space is kind of like a big psychological experiment of how people behave in systems like that, and the price is like a signal, and I think it has to do a lot with the price actually. Every time I witnessed like several like hype cycles, and they're all solidified. Like there's a narrative, and then there's like for instance in 2013, 14, the discussion was all about the central bank monopoly over creating money. And that was like sort of a taboo that was broken, and the price kind of solidified that it's not a taboo, like solidified that as a fact. Nobody really has any problem nowadays to talk about Bitcoin as money or as an alternative to cash. Then you had like Bitcoin, blockchain, not Bitcoin narrative in 2017 with Ethereum and ICOs. And of course increased the industry size, increased the holder amount, the price, everything was increased, but it followed the same pattern, and it solidified the narrative again, because people are saying no, it's wrong and Bitcoin will fail, and then you see it's not failing, so they're probably right. So it's like really the price is a mechanism sort of to understand what is real or what's the truth at some sense. And you don't see people really talk about blockchain or having this argument about blockchain anymore. So every hype cycle creates new narratives. This is why it will grow 50 times bigger. And then there's the other side that says, it's like PayPal. We already have PayPal. We don't need it. And then you see that, okay, they were wrong. It's really a way like we can actually go back and see what people were thinking at the time, and I can tell you when they bought Bitcoin, because it's so tied to the price. What you think is tied to what assets you're holding, and basically it's like a marketplace of ideas that has like a price signal. This idea is good because the price is big, it's high. That's one way of looking at it, because it's really very, very speculative market. And there's very little that was proven to not work so far, and it's something that in the long term will probably see like more failed experiments, but right now it's just getting bigger. That's the way I feel.
Nice. Okay. Okay, so I think that's all we have time for today. So thanks, Mark, for joining us, and super interested to see where the Fuse project is going.
Thank you.